Bought a used car and discovered a hidden stash of money in the trunk. Now the dangerous previous owner is hunting me down to get it back. Here's how I turned the tables. I never imagined that buying a used car could turn my life upside down. It all started innocently enough. My old sedan had finally kicked the bucket after years of loyal service, and I found myself scouring the classifieds for a replacement. I was on a tight budget, and after days of searching, I stumbled upon what seemed like the deal of a lifetime. A slightly used, well-maintained SUV was listed for a price that was almost too good to be true. I arranged to meet the seller, a sketchy-looking guy named Mike, in a parking lot downtown. He seemed eager to get rid of the car, and after a quick test drive and a cursory glance under the hood, I handed over the cash. Mike's shifty demeanor should have been a red flag, but I was too thrilled about my new ride to notice. Driving home, I couldn't stop smiling. The SUV was a major upgrade from my old beater. It was roomy, smooth, and had all the bells and whistles I'd been missing out on. That evening, I decided to clean out the trunk, hoping to find some overlooked gem, maybe an old GPS or a set of jumper cables. Instead, I found something far more unexpected. As I pulled up the carpet lining, a small compartment caught my eye. It was cleverly concealed and definitely not a factory feature. My heart pounded with curiosity and a tinge of fear. I pried open the hidden compartment, and there it was, a black duffel bag stuffed to the brim with bundles of cash. My hands trembled as I unzipped the bag, revealing stacks upon stacks of crisp $100 bills. This was the kind of money that people killed for. And here it was, sitting in the trunk of my newly purchased SUV. My mind raced with possibilities and questions. Who did this money belong to? Why was it hidden here? And most importantly, what the hell was I going to do with it? I paced my living room for what felt like hours, the duffel bag sitting ominously on my coffee table. I considered calling the police, but something held me back. Greed? Maybe. Fear? Definitely. I decided to sleep on it, hoping that clarity would come with the morning light. That night I dreamt of shadowy figures and ominous threats, waking up in a cold sweat more than once. When morning finally arrived, I felt no closer to a solution. I went about my day trying to act normal, but the weight of my discovery hung over me like a storm cloud. The first sign of trouble came that afternoon. My phone rang, displaying an unknown number. I usually ignored such calls, but something compelled me to answer. A gravelly voice on the other end sent chills down my spine. "I believe you have something that belongs to me," the voice said, calm but menacing. "You don't know who you're dealing with. Return the money and we can forget this ever happened. If not, well, you'll regret it." I stammered out a reply, but the line went dead before I could finish. My hands were shaking and a sense of dread settled in my stomach. This was no prank. Someone dangerous was looking for their money and they had found me. Panicking, I checked my windows and doors, making sure they were locked. My mind raced through possible scenarios and escape plans. I could run, but where to? And with what money? All my savings had gone into buying the SUV. I could hide the cash, but if they found me once, they could find me again. I was trapped, and the clock was ticking. That evening I confided in my best friend, Jake. We had been through thick and thin together, and I trusted him with my life. Over beers in my dimly lit kitchen, I spilled the whole story. Jake's eyes widened with each detail, and by the end, he was pacing as frantically as I had been. "Man, this is bad," Jake said, running a hand through his hair. "You need to give the money back. These people aren't messing around." "I know," I replied, my voice shaky. "But how do I even do that? I don't know who they are or where to find them. And what if they don't keep their word?" Jake sighed, slumping into a chair. "We need a plan, something that keeps you safe and gets them off your back. But first, you need to get out of here. You're not safe in this apartment." We quickly packed a bag and decided to crash at Jake's place for the night. As I locked up my apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. My paranoia was in overdrive, and every shadow seemed like a threat. At Jake's, we stayed up late, brainstorming and researching. We found nothing helpful online about Mike or the SUV, just a dead end at every turn. Exhausted and frustrated, we eventually fell asleep, hoping for a miracle. But miracles don't come easy, and by morning it was clear we were on our own. The phone calls continued, each more threatening than the last. I was in way over my head, but with Jake's support, I felt a sliver of hope. We were determined to turn the tables, but first, we needed to survive. And so began the most harrowing chapter of my life, where every day was a fight for survival and every decision carried life or death consequences. Little did I know this was just the beginning. The next few days passed in a haze of paranoia and fear. Jake and I were constantly looking over our shoulders, jumping at every unexpected noise. We decided to keep moving, crashing at different friends' places each night, never staying in one place too long. It was a stressful, exhausting way to live, but we had no choice. The phone calls kept coming, each one more threatening than the last. One afternoon, as Jake and I were grabbing lunch at a quiet diner on the outskirts of town, my phone rang again. The same unknown number flashed on the screen. My heart raced as I answered, bracing myself for another round of threats. "Time's running out," the gravelly voice said, dripping with menace. "We know where you are. Return the money, or you'll wish you had." I hung up, my hands trembling. "They know where we are, Jake," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "We need to do something, and fast." Jake's face hardened with determination. "We can't keep running forever. We need to figure out who these people are and find a way to deal with them." We spent the rest of the day driving around, trying to shake the feeling of being followed. As the sun set, we pulled into a small, secluded motel, hoping for a few hours of rest and a chance to regroup. Inside our dingy room, we brainstormed our next move. "We need to gather more information," Jake said, pacing the worn carpet. "We can't fight an enemy we don't understand. Tomorrow we'll go back to where you bought the car and see if we can dig up anything on Mike." I nodded, too tired to argue. We took turns keeping watch, our nerves frayed and our senses on high alert. Despite our best efforts, sleep came fitfully, haunted by nightmares of shadowy figures and dark alleys. The next morning we made our way back to the parking lot where I'd bought the SUV. It was a long shot, but we were desperate for any lead. The lot was empty, save for a few abandoned cars and stray litter blowing in the wind. We walked around, searching for any sign of Mike or his associates. Just as we were about to give up, a grizzled old man approached us. He had a wary look in his eyes and a cigarette dangling from his lips. "You two looking for someone?" he rasped, eyeing us suspiciously. "Yeah, we're looking for a guy named Mike," I said, trying to sound casual. "Bought a car from him a few days ago. Have you seen him around?" The old man took a long drag from his cigarette, exhaling slowly. "Mike, huh? That's a name I haven't heard in a while. Shady character. If you're smart, you'll stay away from him." I exchanged a glance with Jake. "We don't have much of a choice," I said. "He sold me a car, and there's been some complications. Do you know where we can find him?" The old man scratched his stubble, contemplating. "Might be able to help you out. Mike's got a few haunts around town. Word is, he's mixed up in some heavy stuff. Drugs, money laundering, you name it. He usually hangs around an old warehouse by the docks. But be careful, son. You're playing with fire." We thanked the old man and made our way to the docks, our anxiety mounting with each passing mile. The warehouse loomed ahead, a decrepit structure that looked like it hadn't seen maintenance in decades. We parked a safe distance away and approached on foot, keeping to the shadows. The place was eerily quiet, save for the distant sound of waves lapping against the shore. We found a side entrance and slipped inside, our hearts pounding in our chests. The interior was dark and musty, with stacks of old crates and machinery gathering dust. We crept through the maze of clutter, straining to hear any signs of activity. Suddenly we heard voices coming from a nearby room. We pressed ourselves against the wall, listening intently. "I'm telling you, the kid has the money!" a familiar voice growled. It was Mike. "We just need to keep the pressure on him. He'll crack eventually." "We don't have time for this," another voice responded, this one colder and more authoritative. "The boss is getting impatient. If the kid doesn't give up the money soon, we'll take matters into our own hands." Jake and I exchanged a grim look. It was clear we were dealing with some serious criminals. We needed to get out of there and come up with a new plan, fast. As we turned to leave, my foot caught on a loose board, sending a loud creak echoing through the warehouse. "Did you hear that?" Mike's voice snapped, followed by the sound of footsteps heading our way. We bolted for the exit, our hearts racing. We could hear them chasing after us, shouting and cursing. We burst out of the warehouse and sprinted to the car, diving in and slamming the doors shut. Jake floored the gas pedal, and we sped away, leaving the warehouse and our pursuers in the dust. As we drove back to Jake's place, my mind was racing. We were in way over our heads, but we couldn't back down now. We needed to find a way to turn the tables on these guys, and fast. We spent the rest of the night planning our next move, knowing that the stakes were higher than ever. The following day, we decided to reach out to an old friend of Jake's, a tech-savvy guy named Kevin who had a knack for digging up information. If anyone could help us find dirt on Mike and his associates, it was Kevin. We met Kevin at a coffee shop, explaining our situation in hushed tones. His eyes widened with intrigue as we laid out the details. "Wow, you guys are in deep," Kevin said, tapping away on his laptop. "But don't worry, I'll see what I can find. Give me a few hours." We spent the afternoon anxiously waiting, our nerves frayed and our patience thin. Finally, Kevin called us over to his table, a triumphant grin on his face. "I've got something," he said, spinning his laptop around. "Mike and his crew are part of a larger criminal network. They've been under investigation by the feds for months. If we can get our hands on some solid evidence, we might be able to take them down." Jake and I exchanged a hopeful glance. This was the break we needed. With Kevin's help, we formulated a plan to gather the evidence and bring these guys to justice. It was risky, but it was our best shot. That night, as we prepared for the next phase of our plan, I couldn't help but feel a sense of determination. We were no longer just running scared. We were fighting back, and I was ready to do whatever it took to turn the tables and reclaim my life. The plan was set. Kevin's research had given us a sliver of hope, but it was going to take more than hope to bring down Mike and his crew. We needed hard evidence, and we needed it fast. Our lives depended on it. Jake, Kevin, and I spent the next few days meticulously planning our approach. We knew the risk was enormous, but so were the stakes. The goal was to infiltrate Mike's operation, gather incriminating evidence, and turn it over to the authorities. It was dangerous, but it was our best shot. Kevin managed to hack into some of Mike's communications, providing us with valuable intel. We learned that Mike was planning a big deal at another warehouse on the outskirts of town. This was our chance to catch him in the act. We decided to split up. Kevin would stay in a safe location, monitoring the situation and guiding us through our earpieces. Jake and I would go undercover, posing as potential buyers looking to get in on the deal. With Kevin's tech skills and our determination, we were ready to face whatever came our way. The day of the deal, Jake and I donned our disguises, dark sunglasses, baseball caps, and nondescript clothing. We drove to the meeting point, our nerves on edge. Kevin's voice crackled in our ears as we approached the warehouse. "Remember, stay calm and stick to the plan," Kevin instructed. "I'll be your eyes and ears. If anything goes wrong, get out of there immediately." We nodded, though Kevin couldn't see us, and parked the car a short distance from the warehouse. Taking a deep breath, we approached the entrance. 2 burly guards eyed us suspiciously, but a few words and a fake story about being new players in the game got us inside. The warehouse was dimly lit and filled with the hum of machinery. In the center, a group of men were gathered around a table, discussing the terms of the deal. At the head of the table was Mike, his eyes scanning the room with a predatory gleam. Jake and I moved closer, trying to blend in with the crowd. Kevin's voice guided us through the earpieces, directing us where to stand and what to listen for. We needed to capture audio and visual evidence of the deal, but getting too close was dangerous. As the meeting progressed, my heart pounded in my chest. I discreetly activated the hidden camera in my jacket, aiming it at the table. Mike's voice boomed as he discussed prices, quantities, and delivery dates. This was exactly what we needed. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. One of Mike's henchmen pointed in our direction, suspicion etched on his face. "Who are these guys?" he demanded, his voice filled with distrust. Jake stepped forward, trying to sound confident. "Just here to observe, make sure everything's on the up and up before we commit." Mike's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I thought we were busted. But then he nodded, satisfied with the explanation. The tension eased, and the meeting continued. We managed to capture several minutes of incriminating footage before deciding it was time to make our exit. As we turned to leave, Mike's voice stopped us. "Hold on a second," he said, his tone dangerously calm. "I don't think I've seen you two around before. What did you say your names were?" Panic surged through me, but I forced myself to stay calm. "I'm Chris, and this is Jake. We're new to the scene, just trying to make some connections." Mike studied us for a moment longer, then shrugged. "All right, Chris and Jake. Just remember, trust is earned around here. Don't do anything stupid." We nodded and quickly made our way out of the warehouse, my heart pounding in my ears. Once we were safely back in the car, we breathed a collective sigh of relief. "Good job, guys," Kevin's voice crackled through the earpiece. "I've got everything recorded. Let's get out of here before they realize what just happened." We drove back to Kevin's place, the adrenaline slowly wearing off. The footage we had captured was solid evidence of Mike's criminal activities, but we knew it wasn't enough to bring down the entire operation. We needed more. That night we gathered around Kevin's computer, reviewing the footage and planning our next move. We knew we had to be smart and strategic. Mike and his crew were dangerous, and one wrong move could cost us our lives. Over the next few days, we continued to gather evidence. Kevin hacked into more of Mike's communications, uncovering details about his network and upcoming deals. We followed the leads, capturing incriminating conversations and transactions. Our efforts were paying off, but the stress was taking its toll. Jake and I were constantly on edge, barely sleeping and always looking over our shoulders. The threats from Mike's crew didn't stop, and we knew it was only a matter of time before they caught on to our plan. One evening, as we were reviewing the latest batch of evidence, Jake's phone buzzed with a text message. His face paled as he read it. "They know where I live," he said, his voice shaking. "They've threatened my family." A cold dread settled over us. This was a new level of threat, and it was clear that we were running out of time. We needed to act fast and decisively. We decided to take our evidence to the authorities, hoping they would be able to protect us and take down Mike's operation. Kevin compiled all the footage, recordings, and information into a comprehensive file. With our hearts heavy and our nerves frayed, we made our way to the local FBI office. The agent we spoke with listened intently as we explained our situation, reviewing the evidence with a critical eye. "This is good," he said finally, nodding. "This is very good. We've been after these guys for a while, and this might be the break we need." Relief washed over us, but it was tempered by fear. The agent assured us that they would take immediate action, but warned us to stay vigilant. "These guys are dangerous. We'll do our best to protect you, but you need to be careful." We left the FBI office with a mix of hope and anxiety. We had done everything we could, but the danger was far from over. We spent the night at a safe house provided by the authorities, trying to rest but finding sleep elusive. The next morning we received a call from the agent. "We've got a team ready to move in on Mike's operation," he said. "We need you to come with us, identify key players, and help us secure the evidence." It was a risky move, but we knew it was necessary. We met the FBI team at a staging area near the docks, gearing up for the raid. The tension was palpable as we reviewed the plan, each of us understanding the gravity of the situation. As we approached the warehouse, the agents moved in with precision and efficiency. Jake and I stayed back, watching as the team stormed the building. Shouts and gunfire echoed through the air, and moments later the agents emerged with several suspects in custody, including Mike. Relief and exhaustion washed over us as we realized it was finally over. Mike's operation had been dismantled, and we were safe, at least for now. The agents thanked us for our help, promising to keep us informed as the case progressed. In the days that followed, we tried to return to some semblance of normalcy. It wasn't easy, but knowing that Mike and his crew were behind bars gave us some peace of mind. We had faced danger head-on and come out on the other side stronger and more resilient. But as I looked at the duffel bag of money still hidden in my apartment, I knew our story wasn't quite over. There were still loose ends to tie up, and I was determined to see it through to the very end. With Mike and his crew behind bars, I finally felt like I could breathe again. Jake and I returned to our usual routines, but the memory of those harrowing weeks lingered in the back of my mind. The FBI had assured us they would keep us updated on the case and that Mike's associates were being closely monitored. It provided some comfort, but I knew the duffel bag of money was a ticking time bomb that needed to be dealt with. Jake and I decided it was time to make a move with the cash. We couldn't keep it hidden forever, and returning it to its rightful owner was no longer an option, since that owner was a criminal. But before we could come up with a solid plan, something unexpected happened. One afternoon I received a call from Agent Roberts, the FBI agent we had been working with. "We've got some news," he said, his tone serious. "Mike's organization is bigger than we thought. He's just a small part of a larger network. We need your help again." My heart sank. I thought we were done with this nightmare, but it seemed like it was far from over. "What do you need us to do?" I asked, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. "We've identified several key players in the network, but we need more evidence to take them down," Agent Roberts explained. "We're hoping you can assist us with an undercover operation. You're already familiar with Mike's operation, and your help could be invaluable." I hesitated, the fear of getting involved again gnawing at me. But Jake, who had been listening on speakerphone, gave me a reassuring nod. "We're in," I said finally. "What's the plan?" Over the next few days, Agent Roberts briefed us on the details. We were to pose as independent operatives looking to join the larger network. Our job was to gain the trust of the key players and gather enough evidence to bring them down. It was risky, but we were determined to see it through. Our first target was a man named Carlos, a high-ranking member of the network who operated out of a nightclub downtown. Carlos was known for his ruthless tactics and extensive connections. We needed to get close to him without arousing suspicion. Kevin, our tech-savvy friend, helped us create convincing backstories and fake identities. He also provided us with the latest in surveillance tech, ensuring we could record everything without being detected. Armed with our new identities, Jake and I made our way to the nightclub, ready to begin the operation. The nightclub was a flashy, neon-lit establishment that catered to the city's elite. Inside, the thumping bass of the music and the dazzling lights created a surreal atmosphere. We made our way to the bar, trying to blend in with the crowd. After a few minutes, we spotted Carlos sitting in a VIP section, surrounded by bodyguards and a group of glamorous women. Jake nudged me, and we approached cautiously, making sure to appear confident and unthreatening. One of the bodyguards stepped forward, eyeing us suspiciously. "Who are you, and what do you want?" "We're here to see Carlos," I said, keeping my voice steady. "We have a proposition for him." The bodyguard scrutinized us for a moment, then turned to Carlos, who gave a slight nod. "Let them through," he said, his voice barely audible over the music. We stepped into the VIP section, trying to mask our nervousness. Carlos looked up, his piercing gaze assessing us. "What's this proposition you have?" he asked, a hint of curiosity in his tone. "We're looking to join your network," Jake said smoothly. "We've heard a lot about your operation, and we believe we can be valuable assets." Carlos leaned back, a skeptical smile playing on his lips. "And what makes you think you're worthy of joining us?" I took a deep breath, recalling the script we had rehearsed. We've got connections and skills that can benefit your operation. We're discreet, efficient, and loyal. All we need is a chance to prove ourselves." Carlos studied us for a moment, then nodded. "All right, I'll give you a chance. But if you screw up, you're dead. Understand?" We nodded, trying to hide our relief. Carlos gestured to one of his bodyguards. "Take them to the back room. We'll see what they're made of." We followed the bodyguard to a small, dimly lit room at the back of the nightclub. Inside, a table was set up with various documents and a laptop. The bodyguard handed us a file. "This is your first task. Complete it successfully, and you'll earn Carlos's trust." The file contained details about a rival gang that had been causing trouble for Carlos's operation. Our job was to gather intelligence on their activities and report back. It was a dangerous assignment, but it was exactly the kind of evidence we needed to bring down the network. We spent the next few days staking out the rival gang's hideout using Kevin's tech to gather as much information as possible. It was tense and nerve-wracking work, but we managed to compile a comprehensive report. When we returned to the nightclub, Carlos was impressed with our thoroughness. "You've done well," he said, nodding approvingly. "I think you two might actually be useful." With Carlos's trust beginning to build, we continued to take on more assignments, each one bringing us deeper into the network. The more we learned, the more dangerous it became, but we were determined to see it through. One night, as we were wrapping up another successful mission, Carlos called us into his office. He looked more serious than usual, and I felt a knot of anxiety in my stomach. "We've got a big job coming up," Carlos said, his eyes fixed on us. "I need you to oversee the transaction. It's a high-stakes deal, and I can't afford any mistakes." Jake and I exchanged a glance, knowing this was the opportunity we had been waiting for. If we could gather evidence of this major deal, it would be the final piece we needed to bring down the entire network. "Consider it done," Jake said confidently. "We won't let you down." Carlos nodded, handing us a detailed dossier. "Good. Make sure everything goes smoothly, and you'll be rewarded handsomely." We spent the next few days preparing for the deal, coordinating with Kevin and Agent Roberts. The plan was to record the transaction, gather as much evidence as possible, and then signal the FBI to move in. The night of the deal, we arrived at the designated location, a secluded warehouse on the outskirts of town. The place was heavily guarded, and the tension was palpable. We met with Carlos and his associates, doing our best to act calm and collected. As the deal progressed, we discreetly recorded everything, capturing conversations, transactions, and exchanges of money. It was nerve-wracking work, but we knew it was our best chance to bring down the network. Just as the deal was about to conclude, a group of armed men burst into the warehouse. For a moment, I thought the FBI had moved in prematurely, but it quickly became clear that these men were not law enforcement. They were members of the rival gang we had previously spied on, and they were here to settle a score. Chaos erupted as gunfire filled the air. Jake and I dove for cover, desperately trying to avoid the crossfire. Carlos and his men returned fire, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. I glanced at Jake, his face pale with fear, and knew we had to act fast. Amidst the chaos, I managed to signal Kevin, who relayed our situation to Agent Roberts. Within minutes, the warehouse was swarming with FBI agents, who quickly secured the area and apprehended the rival gang members. Carlos and his associates were taken into custody, along with the evidence we had gathered. It was a relief to see the operation finally come to an end, but the reality of what we had just survived left us shaken. Agent Roberts approached us, a look of gratitude on his face. "You two did an incredible job," he said. "Thanks to you, we've dismantled a major criminal network. You should be proud." We nodded, too exhausted to respond. The adrenaline was wearing off, and the reality of what we had just been through was beginning to sink in. We had faced incredible danger, but we had come out the other side stronger and more determined. As we made our way back to Jake's place, I couldn't help but think about the duffel bag of money still hidden in my apartment. It was a reminder of how this all began and how far we had come. The danger was over, but our story wasn't quite finished. There were still loose ends to tie up, and I was determined to see it through to the very end. With the dust settling from the FBI raid and the dismantling of Carlos's network, Jake and I thought we might finally have a moment to catch our breath. The operation had been a success, but the shadow of the duffel bag filled with cash still loomed over us. There were also the remaining members of Mike's larger network to consider, who might still be at large and pose a threat. One evening, as Jake and I sat in his living room sipping beers and trying to relax, my phone rang. It was Agent Roberts. I answered, expecting a routine follow-up, but his voice was tense. "We've got a situation," he said. "Some of Carlos's associates have slipped through our net. They know about you two and the money. They're coming for you." My blood ran cold. Just when we thought we were out of the woods, another threat loomed. I relayed the information to Jake, who immediately sprang into action, grabbing his laptop and starting to research potential safe houses and escape routes. "All right," Jake said. "We need to get that money out of your apartment and into a secure location. We can't risk them finding it. And we need a plan to deal with these guys once and for all." We packed our things quickly and headed to my apartment. The streets were eerily quiet as we drove, the tension in the air palpable. Once inside, we retrieved the duffel bag from its hiding spot and stashed it in the trunk of the SUV. We knew we had to move fast and stay one step ahead of Carlos's associates. We decided to head to an old cabin owned by Jake's family, deep in the woods and far from prying eyes. It was the perfect place to lie low and regroup. The drive was long and nerve-wracking, but we finally arrived just as dawn was breaking. The cabin was rustic but cozy, surrounded by dense forest. It felt like a haven, at least for the moment. After securing the duffel bag in a hidden compartment under the cabin floor, we sat down to strategize. We needed a plan to turn the tables on Carlos's associates, just as we had with Mike and his crew. It was time to fight back. Jake reached out to Kevin, who agreed to help us once more. We set up a secure line of communication and began gathering information on the remaining members of the network. With Kevin's tech skills, we managed to pinpoint the locations of several key players and started devising a plan to neutralize them. Over the next few days, we prepared for our counterattack. We set up surveillance around the cabin and created escape routes in case things went south. We also contacted Agent Roberts, who agreed to provide backup when the time came. It was a risky move, but we knew it was the only way to ensure our safety. The night of our first counterattack, we headed to a small warehouse on the outskirts of the city, similar to the one where we had first encountered Mike and Carlos. According to Kevin's intel, this was where some of Carlos's most dangerous associates were hiding out. We approached the warehouse cautiously, making sure to avoid detection. Inside, we could hear voices and the faint hum of machinery. Jake and I exchanged a nod, signaling that it was time to move. We slipped inside, using the shadows to our advantage. The layout was similar to the other warehouses we had encountered, with stacks of crates and dim lighting. We could see a group of men gathered around a table discussing their next move. Among them was Ricardo, one of Carlos's top lieutenants. Jake and I positioned ourselves behind a stack of crates, close enough to overhear their conversation. They were discussing plans to track us down and retrieve the money, unaware that we were already one step ahead. I activated the recording device hidden in my jacket, capturing their conversation. Just as we were about to signal Agent Roberts, one of the men spotted us. Chaos erupted as they drew their weapons and started firing. Jake and I dove for cover, returning fire as best we could. The situation was spiraling out of control, but we were determined to see it through. Amidst the gunfire, I managed to signal Roberts, who had been waiting nearby with a team of agents. Within minutes, the FBI stormed the warehouse, quickly subduing Ricardo and his men. The gunfire ceased, and the tension began to dissipate as the agents secured the area. Agent Roberts approached us, his face a mix of relief and concern. "Good job," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "You two did great, but this isn't over. There are still more out there, and they won't stop until they get what they want." We nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. The success of our counterattack gave us a brief moment of relief, but we knew we couldn't let our guard down. There were still loose ends to tie up, and more dangerous players in the network who needed to be dealt with. Over the next few weeks, we continued our efforts to dismantle the remaining parts of the network. Each operation brought us closer to safety, but also deeper into the dangerous underworld we had unwittingly become a part of. Jake, Kevin, and I formed a tight-knit team, working together seamlessly to outsmart and outmaneuver our adversaries. Our confidence grew with each success, but so did the danger. The closer we got to the top, the more ruthless our enemies became. One night, as we were preparing for another operation, we received a cryptic message on Kevin's encrypted line. It was from an unknown source, claiming to have information that could bring down the entire network. The message instructed us to meet at a remote location the following night. It felt like a trap, but the potential payoff was too great to ignore. We decided to take the risk, preparing ourselves for whatever lay ahead. The next evening, we made our way to the designated meeting spot, a deserted warehouse by the docks. We arrived early, scouting the area and setting up surveillance. As the appointed time approached, a lone figure emerged from the shadows. It was a woman, her face obscured by a hood. She approached cautiously, her eyes scanning the area for any signs of danger. "I don't have much time," she said, her voice low and urgent. "I used to work for Carlos. I know things that can take down the entire network, but I need your help." We listened as she detailed the inner workings of the organization, providing us with invaluable information. It was clear she was taking a huge risk by coming to us, but her knowledge could be the key to ending this once and for all. As we left the meeting, my mind raced with possibilities. We had the information we needed to strike a decisive blow, but the danger was greater than ever. We had come too far to turn back now. It was time to finish what we started and ensure our safety once and for all. The final phase of our plan was set in motion. With the help of the informant and Agent Roberts, we prepared for one last operation to dismantle the network and bring the remaining members to justice. It was a high-stakes gamble, but we were ready to put everything on the line. As the day of the operation approached, we felt a mix of anticipation and fear. The danger was real, but so was the opportunity to finally be free of this nightmare. We steeled ourselves for the final showdown, determined to see it through to the end. And so, we prepared to turn the tables one last time, ready to face whatever came our way. The end was in sight, but the path to get there would be fraught with danger and uncertainty. We had come too far to back down now. It was time to finish the fight and reclaim our lives. The final showdown was looming, and the stakes had never been higher. With the information from the informant, we had a clear picture of the network's inner workings. Agent Roberts and his team were ready, and we had meticulously planned our moves. But as we prepared, we couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Jake, Kevin, and I spent the days leading up to the operation in a state of heightened alertness. Every shadow seemed ominous, every sound suspicious. We knew Carlos' associates were still out there, and they wouldn't go down without a fight. The night before the operation, we holed up in the cabin, making final preparations. Kevin was at his laptop, monitoring communications and ensuring our encrypted lines were secure. Jake was checking our equipment, making sure everything was in order. I paced the room, going over the plan in my head for the 100th time. "All right," Kevin said, breaking the silence. "I've got a lock on the remaining key players. They're meeting tomorrow night at an abandoned factory on the outskirts of town. This is our chance to take them all down in one fell swoop." Jake nodded, his expression grim. "We need to be ready for anything. These guys are dangerous, and they won't go down easily." We finalized our strategy, knowing that the slightest misstep could be deadly. The plan was to infiltrate the factory, gather final evidence of their operations, and signal Agent Roberts and his team to move in. It was risky, but it was our best shot at ending this once and for all. The next evening, we made our way to the factory. The place was a relic of the past, its crumbling walls and broken windows casting eerie shadows in the moonlight. We parked a safe distance away and approached on foot, keeping to the shadows. Inside, the factory was a labyrinth of rusted machinery and debris. We navigated the maze carefully, our senses on high alert. In the distance, we could hear voices, Carlos' associates discussing their next move. We moved closer, positioning ourselves behind a stack of old crates. I activated the hidden camera in my jacket, aiming it at the group. They were gathered around a table, maps and documents spread out before them. The conversation was tense, filled with talk of retribution and plans to recover the money. "We need to find those bastards," one of them growled. "They've caused us enough trouble." "We will," another replied. "But first, we need to secure our assets. The money is the key." Jake and I exchanged a glance. This was the evidence we needed. As I continued to record, Kevin's voice crackled in our earpieces. "I'm picking up movement outside. Be careful." My heart raced as I scanned the room, searching for an escape route. Suddenly, one of the men looked up, his eyes narrowing as he spotted us. "Hey! Who are you?" Panic surged through me as the group reached for their weapons. Jake and I bolted, ducking behind machinery and sprinting for the exit. Bullets ricocheted off metal, the deafening sound echoing through the factory. "Kevin, we need that signal now!" I shouted into the earpiece, dodging another barrage of gunfire. "On it!" Kevin replied, his voice tense. Moments later, we heard the distant wail of sirens approaching. The FBI was on its way, but we needed to hold out until they arrived. We took cover behind a massive steel beam, returning fire as best we could. The factory was a war zone, filled with smoke and the sounds of conflict. My mind raced, searching for a way to turn the tide. Then I saw it, a stack of barrels marked flammable. An idea formed in my mind, and I signaled to Jake. "Cover me!" Jake nodded, providing suppressing fire as I sprinted toward the barrels. I grabbed a nearby piece of metal and struck it against the ground, creating a shower of sparks. The barrels ignited, flames roaring to life and engulfing the area. The explosion rocked the factory, sending debris flying and disorienting our pursuers. Amidst the chaos, we made a break for the exit, the flames providing a momentary distraction. We burst out of the factory just as the FBI agents arrived, their vehicles screeching to a halt. Agent Roberts led the charge, his team moving in to secure the area and apprehend Carlos' associates. "Good work, guys," Roberts said, his voice firm but appreciative. "We've got them." Relief washed over us as the agents secured the remaining criminals. The operation had been a success, and the network was finally dismantled. But as the adrenaline wore off, exhaustion set in, and I realized just how close we had come to losing everything. Back at the cabin, we regrouped and reviewed the footage. The evidence was damning, and Agent Roberts assured us that it would lead to significant convictions. The danger was finally over, and we could start to rebuild our lives. But there was one last thing to take care of: the duffel bag of money. It had been the catalyst for everything, and it was time to decide its fate. Jake, Kevin, and I gathered around the bag, the weight of our journey pressing down on us. "We can't keep it," Jake said, breaking the silence. "It's too dangerous. We need to find a way to get rid of it safely." Kevin nodded. "Agreed. But we also need to make sure it doesn't fall back into the wrong hands." We spent the next few days exploring our options, considering everything from turning it over to the authorities to anonymously donating it. In the end, we decided to contact Agent Roberts and let him handle it. He assured us that the money would be used to support ongoing investigations and aid victims of the network's crimes. With the money finally out of our hands, a sense of closure settled over us. We had faced incredible danger, but we had also grown stronger and more resilient. The bonds we had formed during this ordeal would last a lifetime. As we sat around a campfire outside the cabin reflecting on our journey, I felt a sense of peace. The nightmare was over, and we had come out the other side stronger. We had turned the tables on our enemies and reclaimed our lives. "Here's to new beginnings," Jake said, raising his beer, "and to never buying a used car from a sketchy guy in a parking lot again." We laughed, the tension finally breaking. It was the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. We had faced our fears, outsmarted our enemies, and emerged victorious. And as the flames crackled and the stars shone overhead, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we were ready to face them together. The next few weeks passed in a blur. The dust from the final showdown had settled, but the weight of everything we'd been through still lingered. Jake, Kevin, and I resumed our lives, trying to find a sense of normalcy after the chaos. The FBI was wrapping up the last details of their investigation, and Agent Roberts assured us that the case against Carlos's network was solid. One afternoon, as I was sorting through the last of the paperwork related to the operation, my phone buzzed with a call from Roberts. "We need to talk," he said, his voice serious. "There's something you need to know." We met at a quiet cafe downtown. Roberts looked tired but resolute. He slid a folder across the table toward me. "We've been digging deeper into Carlos's network and the money you found. There's more to this than we initially thought." I opened the folder and started reading. The documents detailed a series of financial transactions and connections that went far beyond Carlos and Mike. This was part of a much larger web involving high-level corruption and criminal enterprises reaching into places I'd never imagined. "We believe the money you found was part of a slush fund used to bribe officials and finance illegal operations," Roberts explained. "Carlos's network was just one piece of a much larger puzzle. There are still powerful people out there who will stop at nothing to protect their interests." The enormity of what he was saying hit me like a ton of bricks. Just when I thought we were out of danger, it turned out we were still in the crosshairs of something much bigger. "So what do we do now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Robert sighed. "We keep fighting. We've made a lot of progress, but there's still work to be done. We need to track down the remaining players and gather enough evidence to bring them to justice. And we need your help." I glanced at Jake and Kevin, who had joined me for the meeting. They both nodded, their expressions determined. We had come too far to back down now. "We're in," I said, feeling a renewed sense of resolve. "What do you need us to do?" Roberts outlined the plan. We would continue working undercover, using the information we had gathered to infiltrate the higher levels of the network. It was risky, but we were more prepared now than we had ever been. Our first target was a man named Victor, a powerful figure who controlled a significant portion of the network's financial operations. He was known for his ruthlessness and had a reputation for eliminating anyone who posed a threat to his empire. Taking him down would be a critical blow to the network. With Kevin's tech skills and Jake's resourcefulness, we spent the next few days gathering intelligence on Victor. We tracked his movements, identified his associates, and mapped out his operations. It was painstaking work, but it was necessary if we were going to take him down. The plan was to intercept a shipment of illegal goods that Victor was overseeing. The shipment was scheduled to arrive at a remote warehouse on the outskirts of town. We would gather evidence of the transaction and signal the FBI to move in and make the arrests. The night of the operation, we arrived at the warehouse, our nerves on edge. We parked a safe distance away and approached on foot, using the darkness to our advantage. The warehouse was heavily guarded, with men patrolling the perimeter and surveillance cameras scanning the area. Kevin had hacked into the security system, giving us access to the camera feeds. We watched as the shipment arrived, a convoy of trucks pulling into the warehouse. Victor was there, overseeing the operation with his characteristic cold efficiency. We moved into position, hiding behind a stack of crates. I activated the hidden camera in my jacket, capturing footage of the transaction. The tension was palpable, every sound amplified in the stillness of the night. Suddenly, one of the guards spotted us. "Hey, what are you doing here?" he shouted, drawing his weapon. Panic surged through me, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Run!" I shouted to Jake and Kevin, diving for cover as bullets whizzed past us. We returned fire, trying to keep the guards at bay while signaling Roberts and his team. Within minutes, the sound of sirens filled the air, and the FBI agents stormed the warehouse. The ensuing firefight was intense. Victor's men put up fierce resistance, but the FBI was relentless. I stayed low, recording as much as I could while avoiding the crossfire. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the shooting stopped, and the agents secured the area. Victor was among those arrested. Roberts approached us, a look of satisfaction on his face. "We got him," he said. "Thanks to you, we have enough evidence to bring him down." Relief washed over me, but it was tempered by the knowledge that our work wasn't finished. There were still more players in the network, and we needed to continue our efforts to dismantle it. Over the next few weeks, we worked closely with the FBI, using the information we had gathered to target the remaining members of the network. Each operation brought us closer to our goal, but it was exhausting work. The danger was ever present, and the toll on our mental and physical health was significant. One evening, as we were debriefing with Roberts, he handed me another folder. "There's one more thing you need to see," he said, his expression serious. I opened the folder and found a series of photographs and documents detailing a man named Dmitri, a high-ranking official who had been pulling the strings from behind the scenes. He was the mastermind behind the entire operation, and bringing him down would be the final nail in the coffin for the network. "Dmitri is our last target," Roberts explained. "He's elusive and extremely dangerous. This will be our most challenging operation yet." We spent the next few days preparing for the mission. Dmitri was known for his paranoia and had a fortress-like estate in the countryside, heavily guarded and equipped with state-of-the-art security systems. Getting to him would require meticulous planning and flawless execution. The night of the operation, we approached the estate under the cover of darkness. Kevin had hacked into the security system, giving us temporary access to the camera feeds and disabling the alarms. We moved silently through the estate, avoiding the guards and making our way to Dmitri's office. As we reached the office, I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. This was it, the final step in our long and dangerous journey. We positioned ourselves outside the door, ready to move in. I signaled to Jake and Kevin, and we burst into the office, weapons drawn. Dmitri was there, his expression a mix of surprise and anger. He reached for a gun, but Jake was faster, disarming him and forcing him to the ground. "You're finished, Dmitri," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "It's over." The FBI agents moved in, securing Dmitri and gathering evidence from his office. The operation had been a success, and the network was finally dismantled. As we left the estate, a sense of relief and accomplishment washed over me. We had faced incredible danger and overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. But we had prevailed. The nightmare was finally over, and we could start to rebuild our lives. In the weeks that followed, we worked closely with the FBI to wrap up the remaining details of the case. The evidence we had gathered led to significant convictions, and the network was effectively dismantled. We received commendations for our efforts, and our lives slowly began to return to normal. One evening, as we sat around a campfire outside the cabin, reflecting on our journey, I felt a sense of peace. We had faced our fears, outsmarted our enemies, and emerged victorious. The bonds we had formed during this ordeal would last a lifetime, and I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we were ready to face them together. "Here's to new beginnings," Jake said, raising his beer, "and to never buying a used car from a sketchy guy in a parking lot again." We laughed, the tension finally breaking. It was the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. We had turned the tables on our enemies and reclaimed our lives, and I knew that whatever the future held, we were ready to face it together. The operation against Dmitri had been a resounding success, but as we all knew, the aftermath of taking down a criminal empire is rarely straightforward. While the bulk of Dmitri's network had been dismantled, a few key players had managed to slip through the cracks. These remnants were determined to reclaim their power and retaliate against those who had brought their empire to its knees. Jake, Kevin and I tried to return to normalcy, but it became clear that we were still being hunted. The phone calls and threats began anew, this time more menacing than ever. We couldn't let our guard down, knowing that the final remnants of the network were out for blood. One evening, as we sat in the cabin discussing our next steps, Kevin's laptop pinged with an urgent message. It was from an anonymous source claiming to have critical information about the last remaining players. The message instructed us to meet at a secluded location the following night. "It could be a trap," Jake said, his expression wary. "Or it could be our chance to finally end this," I replied, feeling a mix of hope and anxiety. "We've come this far. We have to see it through." We agreed to take the risk, preparing for the worst, but hoping for the best. The next evening we drove to the designated meeting spot, a remote clearing in the woods. The moon cast an eerie glow over the landscape as we parked the SUV and stepped out, our senses on high alert. A figure emerged from the shadows, a woman in her mid-30s, her face partially hidden by the hood of her jacket. "Are you the ones who took down Dmitri?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "We are," I said, stepping forward. "Who are you, and what do you know?" She pulled back her hood, revealing a face marked by fear and determination. "My name is Elena. I worked for Dmitri, but I was never loyal to him. I have information that can help you take down the remaining members of the network. But you have to promise me protection." "We'll do everything we can to keep you safe," Jake said, his tone reassuring. "What do you have for us?" Elena handed us a USB drive. "This contains records of transactions, names, locations, everything you need to find the last of them. They're planning something big, and if you don't stop them, it will be chaos." We took the drive, thanking her for her bravery. As she turned to leave, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of another harrowing chapter. Back at the cabin, we reviewed the contents of the USB drive. It was a treasure trove of information, detailing the operations of the remaining members. They were planning a major deal that would re-establish their power and eliminate anyone who stood in their way, namely, us. "We need to act fast," Kevin said, his eyes scanning the data. "They're planning to meet in 2 days at an abandoned factory on the outskirts of the city." "We need to gather evidence and hit them hard," I said, feeling a surge of determination. "This ends now." We spent the next 48 hours planning our assault. Kevin worked his magic, hacking into security systems and setting up surveillance. Jake and I gathered equipment and strategized our approach. The FBI was ready to assist, but we knew the initial infiltration would be up to us. The night of the operation, we approached the factory with the same mix of caution and resolve that had carried us through the previous missions. The place was a fortress, with guards patrolling every entrance and security cameras scanning the area. Kevin's voice came through our earpieces. "I've disabled the cameras for a 10-minute window. You need to move now." We slipped through the shadows, making our way inside. The factory was a maze of rusted machinery and dark corners, the perfect setting for an ambush. We could hear voices in the distance, the remnants of Dmitri's network discussing their plans. We positioned ourselves behind a stack of crates, activating our recording devices. The conversation was tense, filled with talk of retribution and violence. It was clear they were determined to make their move regardless of the cost. Just as we were about to signal the FBI, one of the guards spotted us. "Intruders!" he shouted, drawing his weapon. The factory erupted into chaos as gunfire filled the air. Jake and I returned fire, trying to keep the guards at bay while Kevin coordinated with the FBI. The sound of sirens in the distance signaled the approaching backup, but we needed to hold out until they arrived. "Stay low and keep moving!" I shouted to Jake, ducking behind a steel beam as bullets whizzed past. We navigated the factory, engaging in a deadly game of cat and mouse with the guards. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of gunpowder, every step fraught with danger. Finally, we heard the unmistakable sound of the FBI breaching the factory. Agent Roberts led the charge, his team moving in with precision and efficiency. They quickly secured the area, apprehending the remaining members of the network. The firefight came to an abrupt end as the last of Dimitri's associates were taken into custody. As the dust settled, Roberts approached us, a look of satisfaction on his face. "You did it," he said. "It's finally over." Relief washed over me, but it was mixed with exhaustion and the lingering adrenaline. We had faced incredible danger and emerged victorious, but the toll it had taken was undeniable. We spent the next few days helping the FBI wrap up the case, providing statements and reviewing the evidence. The network was dismantled, and the city was a little safer because of our efforts. Back at the cabin, we finally allowed ourselves to relax. The constant threat was gone, and we could begin to rebuild our lives without fear. The bonds we had formed during this ordeal were unbreakable, and we knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. One evening, as we sat around the campfire, the stars shining brightly overhead, Jake raised his beer in a toast. To surviving the impossible and to new beginnings. We clinked our bottles, the sense of camaraderie and relief palpable. The nightmare was over, and we had come out the other side stronger and more resilient. "Here's to never buying a used car from a sketchy guy in a parking lot again," I added, smiling. We laughed, the tension finally breaking. It was the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. We had turned the tables on our enemies and reclaimed our lives, and as the flames crackled and the night wore on, I knew that whatever the future held, we were ready to face it together. With the remnants of Dimitri's network finally behind bars, the sense of danger that had loomed over our lives for months began to dissipate. The FBI ensured us that the evidence we had gathered would lead to long sentences for those involved, effectively dismantling the criminal empire for good. Agent Roberts stayed in touch, keeping us updated on the progress of the legal proceedings. Despite the relief, there was an adjustment period as Jake, Kevin, and I tried to return to a semblance of normal life. The adrenaline and constant state of alertness had become our norm, and it took time to relearn what it meant to feel safe. One day, as I was tidying up the cabin, my phone rang. It was Agent Roberts. "Good news," he said. "The trials are progressing well, and we're seeing significant convictions. We couldn't have done this without you three." Hearing that was a balm to my frazzled nerves. The gratitude from Roberts was genuine, and it felt good to know that our efforts had made a tangible difference. A week later, Jake and I decided it was time to return to the city. We had stayed at the cabin long enough, and it was time to face the world again. Kevin opted to stay behind for a bit, needing more time to decompress after the ordeal. As we drove back to the city, I couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed. The streets that had once felt suffocating now seemed alive with possibility. It was as if a veil had lifted, and the future, though uncertain, felt bright. Back in the city, we reconnected with friends and family who had been worried sick. There were tears, hugs, and countless stories to share. For the first time in months, we could laugh without looking over our shoulders, sleep without nightmares, and live without fear. One evening, as Jake and I sat in my apartment, now fortified with new security measures, he brought up something that had been on both our minds. "What about the money?" he asked, referring to the duffel bag we had handed over to the FBI. "I've been thinking about that," I replied. "Roberts said it would be used for ongoing investigations and to help victims. It feels like the right thing. We couldn't have kept it, not after everything." Jake nodded. "Agreed. It's better this way. We did the right thing." Just as we were settling into our new routine, I received another call from Roberts. "There's someone who wants to meet you," he said cryptically. "Can you come by the office tomorrow?" Curiosity piqued, I agreed, and the next day Jake and I headed to the FBI headquarters. We were escorted to a conference room where a distinguished-looking woman in her late 50s awaited us. Roberts introduced her as Lisa Thompson, a high-ranking official within the FBI. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice warm yet authoritative. "I've been following your case closely, and I wanted to personally thank you for your bravery and dedication. Without your efforts, we wouldn't have dismantled such a dangerous network." She handed us each a letter of commendation and a small plaque. It felt surreal to be standing there, being recognized for our actions. Thompson continued, "We're also offering you continued support and protection, should you need it. Your safety is our priority." As we left the office, a sense of pride and closure washed over me. We had done something meaningful, something that had made the world a little bit safer. Back in our daily lives, we found new purpose. Jake resumed his job at a tech company, his skills now sharper and more appreciated than ever. I started volunteering at a local community center, helping at-risk youth and sharing my story to inspire and educate. One afternoon, while working at the center, I was approached by a young woman named Sarah. She had been through a tough time and was struggling to find her way. We talked, and as I shared my story, I saw a spark of hope ignite in her eyes. "You really went through all that?" she asked, incredulous. I nodded. "Yeah, and I came out the other side stronger. You can too. It's all about finding your strength and not giving up." Sarah's situation reminded me of how far I'd come. It was cathartic to be able to give back and to use my experiences to help others. Life was slowly falling into place, and each day felt like a step toward healing. One evening, Jake and I were having dinner at our favorite restaurant. The ambiance was lively, and for the first time in a long while, we felt completely at ease. As we reminisced about the past and talked about our plans for the future, I realized how much I valued these moments of normalcy. "Do you ever think about what's next?" Jake asked, his tone contemplative. "All the time," I replied. "I think we've got a lot of possibilities ahead of us. Maybe even start a business, something that makes a difference." Jake smiled. "I like the sound of that. Maybe a security firm? We've got the experience." The idea had merit. We had learned so much about staying safe, navigating dangerous situations, and outsmarting criminals. It could be our way of turning a dark chapter into something positive. As we clinked our glasses in a toast to new beginnings, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. We had survived the impossible and come out the other side stronger, wiser, and more resilient. The nightmares that had once haunted us were now just memories, replaced by dreams of a brighter future. We had turned the tables on our enemies, reclaimed our lives, and were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead together. In the end, it wasn't just about surviving. It was about thriving, finding purpose, and using our experiences to make a difference. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, it felt full of promise. And as I looked at Jake, I knew that whatever came next, we would face it side by side, stronger than ever. Months passed, and life gradually settled into a comfortable rhythm. The fear and tension that once dominated our days were replaced by a newfound sense of normalcy and purpose. Jake, Kevin, and I had not only survived the ordeal but emerged stronger and more determined to make a positive impact on the world around us. The idea of starting a security firm had taken root in our minds, and we spent countless evenings brainstorming and planning. We wanted to use our experiences to help others, providing services that ranged from personal protection to cybersecurity. Our goal was to prevent others from falling victim to the same dangers we had faced. We decided to call our firm Guardian Solutions, symbolizing our commitment to safeguarding our clients and providing peace of mind. Kevin's tech expertise was invaluable as we set up our office, creating a state-of-the-art security infrastructure that would form the backbone of our operations. The day we opened our doors, we felt a mix of excitement and nerves. Guardian Solutions represented a new chapter in our lives, one where we could turn our past struggles into something meaningful. Our first clients were small businesses and individuals looking for protection and security advice, but as word spread, our reputation grew. One afternoon, while we were working in the office, I received a call from Agent Roberts. "Congratulations on the new venture," he said warmly. "I have a proposition for you. The FBI is always in need of consultants with your unique experiences. How would you feel about partnering with us on certain cases?" The offer was unexpected but welcome. Working with the FBI would not only provide us with additional resources, but also allow us to continue making a difference on a larger scale. We accepted the partnership, and soon we were involved in several high-profile cases, lending our expertise to federal investigations. One evening, after a particularly successful operation, we decided to celebrate. Jake, Kevin, and I gathered at our favorite restaurant, reflecting on how far we had come. The atmosphere was lively, and for the first time in a long while we felt truly at ease. "Can you believe it?" Jake said, raising his glass. "From hunted fugitives to partners with the FBI. We've come a long way." Kevin nodded, a rare smile spreading across his face. "We've built something amazing here, and we're just getting started." As we toasted to our success, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. The journey had been perilous, but it had led us to a place of strength and purpose. We had turned our darkest moments into a beacon of hope for others, proving that even in the face of adversity, it was possible to find a way forward. Our work with Guardian Solutions continued to grow. We took on a diverse range of clients, from large corporations to vulnerable individuals seeking protection. Each case was a reminder of why we had started this journey and reinforced our commitment to making the world a safer place. One day, a familiar face walked into our office. It was Elena, the informant who had helped us take down Dmitri. She looked more relaxed, her eyes no longer filled with fear. "I wanted to thank you," she said, her voice steady. "Because of you, I've been able to start a new life. I'm working with a non-profit now, helping others who've been affected by crime. I couldn't have done it without your help." Her words were a powerful reminder of the impact we could have. It wasn't just about taking down criminals. It was about helping people rebuild their lives and find hope again. As time went on, we continued to expand our services, incorporating advanced technologies and innovative strategies to stay ahead of emerging threats. We built a team of dedicated professionals who shared our vision, creating a supportive and dynamic work environment. One evening, as we were wrapping up a successful week, Jake turned to me. "You know, we've been so focused on work we haven't had much time to think about the future. What do you see for Guardian Solutions in the next 5 years?" I smiled, considering his question. "I see us growing, taking on more significant and challenging cases. I see us making a real difference in people's lives, not just through security but by empowering them to protect themselves. And I see us continuing to learn and evolve, always striving to be the best." Jake nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I like that. And personally, what do you see for yourself?" The question gave me pause. For so long my focus had been on survival and then on building our business. But now, with a sense of stability and purpose, I realized there was more to consider. "I see myself finding balance," I said slowly. "Building a life outside of work, maybe even starting a family someday. And always staying connected with you and Kevin. We've been through too much to ever let that go." Jake smiled, raising his glass again. "To the future, whatever it holds." We clinked glasses, a sense of contentment settling over us. The road ahead was still uncertain, but we were ready to face it together, just as we always had. As I looked around at my friends, I felt a deep sense of fulfillment. We had turned the tables on our enemies, reclaimed our lives, and built something extraordinary out of the chaos. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had led us to a place of strength, resilience, and hope. And as the night wore on and the stars shone brightly overhead, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we were ready to face them together, stronger and more united than ever. The nightmare was over, but the adventure was just beginning. And this time we were writing our own story, one filled with promise, purpose, and endless possibilities.